Okay, today we are going to be talking about how to choose the appropriate measure. So if you remember from last chapter, we were talking about something called the measures of center, which were the mean, the median, and the mode, and different types of measures of variation, which was the IQR and the MAD. And those, both the measure of center and the measure of variation, help you to describe the distribution of a data set. And so right now, as we're looking at different graphs, when we consider the shape of a graph, either symmetric or skewed, it can help you choose which measures are the most appropriate based on what shape it is. So when we talk about a symmetric graph, we use the mean to help describe the distribution. And so the measure of center we're looking at is the mean, and the variation that we're looking at is the MAD. And then if the graph is either skewed left or skewed right, we use the median and the IQR, because the IQR is talking about different quartiles. It's breaking it up into parts. And so these are described on page 478 of your book, but we're going to go ahead and try the try it question at the bottom of page 478. It says the frequency table shows the gas mileage of several motorcycles made by a company. What are the most appropriate measures to describe the center and the variation? So before you can decide if you're going to use either the mean or the median or the MAD or the IQR, you have to first know what shape the graph is. And so they have given you a frequency table, which is your clue that you need to make a histogram to discover what shape the graph is. So if you kind of look at your values, they range between, well, not the values, the frequency. The frequencies go between 1 and 10, so your graph needs to go between 1 and 10. I'm going to count by twos. And then I'm going to start graphing. So it says that the first mileage, 40 to 44, 2 motorcycles fell into that category, so I'll graph my first bar up to 2, and then 45 to 49 was 1. You guys are probably noticing I didn't label the bottom axis of my graph. 1, I write really big on the computer, so it's hard for me to write that small. And 2, since I'm just looking at the shape, I'm not too worried about labels right now. But the next part should go up to 6, and then 8, and then 3. And so now, if you remember the different shapes of graph, it might be easiest to kind of draw the outline and say that this graph is skewed. It's either side is not really a mirror image. It's higher on one side, so we're saying the data is skewed. And so more of the motorcycles had higher gas mileage. And so when we're talking about what are the most appropriate measures, if you go back to the first kind of vocabulary section that we were talking about, when the data is skewed, we use the median and the IQR. And so when it asks what are the most appropriate measures, the center, we would use the median, and then the variation, we would be talking about the IQR. It didn't really ask me to find either one of those right now, so for now that's probably a good enough answer. If it asks you to explain, you would have to explain that you know that you should use the IQR and the median to describe these measures of center and variation, because you saw that the graph is skewed. The other example we are going to do is number 10 on page 481. It says find the mean and the median of the data set. Which measure of center best describes the data set? Explain your reasoning. And so you're given a list of numbers here. And so again, you don't have a graph. But if you look, the numbers range from 23 to 29. And so it's probably going to be easiest if you make a dot plot. And so all of these, before you can decide which measures of center or variation are the best, you first need to look at the shape. And so to look at the shape, you have to be able to draw a graph. And so because the range is so small, I'm going to make a dot plot to look at the shape. So remember, a dot plot is just all of your numbers on a number line, and you are calculating the frequency it happens. And so you just mark each time it happens with a dot. My dots are really small. 326 is 25, 28. Okay, that's probably good enough. And so then if we look at the shape of this, kind of draw the outline of it, you should see it's lower on both sides and higher in the middle. So this graph is symmetric. And because it's symmetric, if you look back at the vocabulary, which measure of center best describes the data set? We would be talking about the mean, because when the data display is symmetric, we talk about the mean. And so to answer this question, which measure of center best describes the data set, we would say the mean, because the distribution is symmetric. And then the other thing it asks you to do is find the mean and the median of the data set. And so to find the mean and the median, I would first put everything in order. So if you put your numbers in order from least to greatest, 26, 27, 28, 29. We're looking for the mean. And the median. And so the mean, if you add up all your numbers, you can use a calculator, add them all up, you should get 286. And you're dividing by how many numbers there are. If you count them up, there are 11, which means that the mean is 26. The median, if you find the middle number, when they are in order from least to greatest, you should find that 26 is also the median. So this question had 3 parts. Which measure of center best describes the data set? The mean, even though in this one they were the same technically, and then find the mean and the median, they were both 26.